Hello and welcome to another tutorial. We're going to continue our discussion on native image. We looked at the build output, basically all the details of the outputs that the native image prints to the console as part of the compilation and generating the native executable binary. But the build output also has some options, and you can look at the documentations. Again, GraalVM.org. The latest version is 22.1, I believe, and then reference manual, native image, build output, and then build output options. So I'm going to quickly open this up in a browser, and we can have a look, and then also so GraalVM, build output options, run native image -- expert options all. So it shows not only the regular options that the native image can accept, also all the extra options or flags that are considered as expert options. And then we are pipelining the output of this command to the grep. Grep is just for filtering. It just means a search for this particular string, which is build output, and only show the lines in the output of this command that has this particular string in them. So grep is just for filtering strings, right? And pipelining, we've seen in the past, I mentioned that, let's see, where was that? This one. So actually, let's see, where was when we talked about the terminal. Let's see, terminal, this one. So we said that there are arrows, right? Like the greater than sign, which indicate the IO streams of the console, input stream, output streams, or error. And these are for streams to the files. But then, and then the pipelining is the streams from the output of one application directly to another application. So if you're again not familiar with the basically with the bash terminal, so pipeline, so basically arrow operator means we are streaming the output of a particular application to a file, whereas the pipelining or the pipe operator means we are streaming the output of one application to another application. So you can have a multiple of this pipelining. And so basically the idea is that as I mentioned before, terminal is a text-based application, or a string-based. So the output of for example a application, whatever you execute in terminal, is always going to be some sort of text. Now obviously you can stream this, for example, to a file. So if I just type the name, so let's clear and say here, but for example stream it to a file. So my file.txt. So this output streams the output, which is just a textual output, right? The strings that are supposed to go to the terminal. Instead, it redirects the output to a file. Whereas I can say pipeline the output to another application. Let's say grep anything, I don't know, desktop, right? I want to see if when I list all the directories in my home directory, which one has a desktop. This one has a desktop, right? So there's only one directory, one line in the output of this command that has this word desktop in it, right? So that's how the pipelining works. And now it tells you that you can look at the build output options using this by first you can look at the native image expert options. So let's see, Graal home, bean native image, and then let's first of all look at the version. So let's see, Graal home bean native image -- version, and we're using the 22.1 version. And then we want to look at the output. So let me just open up these. Now we want to look at all the options, -- expert options all, right? So if I don't grep it or just look at all the output of this command, you see there's lots and lots of options, right? There's a huge amount. Now you can save these options to a file and later look at them. For example, let's redirect the output. Instead of to the terminal, I'm going to redirect it to GraalVM expert options.txt. So I'm telling this redirection or the output streaming means instead of printing the output of this application to the terminal, redirect it to a file. And now I can go ahead and go to my home directory and open up this text file. So let's look at it. So you see this text file now exists. I can open it with a text editor. And you see we redirected the output of this application using the output stream of the terminal to a file instead of printing to the terminal, right? So this arrow operator means redirection. And you see, let's bring back this text file. You see there are lots of options. The native image has lots and lots of options, literally like 1,000 different options. And obviously in the I cannot in one course you cannot really go through all these expert options because that takes a huge amount of time, but I will show you some of the most useful options and what do they mean. So for the build output, there are some build outputs that basically like change the behavior of what's printing to the terminal as the native image goes through the build process and creates the executable file. For example, build output breakdowns show code and heap breakdowns as part of the build output. And this is, if you recall, we said that this part of these extra informations in the performing an analysis and creating image, it tells you like what size, what percentage of the total size is for the code area, image heap, other data, how many classes were actually compiled, how many fields and methods were actually needed for your Java application, etc. So build output breakdowns, you can set it to false. And the way you do it for the Boolean options, usually you use plus minus. So all these expert options start with -h. So let's go back to the test. Let's actually go back and open up this text file. And you see there are different categories of these options. One starts with -h. Let me zoom in, right? So these start with -h. The other ones, so let me zoom back. Yeah. So these ones start with -h. colon, the other ones start with -r. So if I scroll down, now they are -r, right? So there's a difference. For the build stage, most flags start with -h and then colon. And if it's a Boolean flag, you can turn it on and off with plus or minus sign, right? So these build output options, these are all Boolean flags because they start with plus or minus. And then build output breakdown. So if I tell it -h plus build output breakdowns, it shows the code and heap breakdowns as part of the build output. And the default is plus, which means by default this is enabled. -h colon plus or minus build output colorful, colorized build output, and by default it's on. But know that your terminal has to support colorful messaging. And we saw that, for example, if you run the fish application on top of your shell in macOS or Linux, then fish supports the colorful outputs. This is the output in macOS, for example. This is the output of Linux. And we saw that in Windows, it's really not that colorful. So it doesn't matter if you turn it on or off. If your terminal doesn't support the colorful output, then you're not going to see it, right? Now, for example, I can go back to my Eclipse and let's delete this, my app. We already created this simple Hello World application, and so I'm going to open up a terminal here. And then, so we pass these flags to the native image, so Graal home, and then bin, and then native image, and then -h, plus, minus, let's look at the flag again. It's build output colorful, so I'm going to copy it, and then go back to my terminal. And then paste this here. So now I'm basically turning this flag off, and then -cp here, and then the name of the main class is hello world without the dot class extension, and I want to generate the my app output. So let's see what happens to the output. And now you see the output is not colorful. Previously it was colorful. The first row was if you look at the previously, the first row was colorful. This was like a purple thing, and then these lines are yellow color. In Linux they were also the yellow color, but now in macOS I turned this boolean flag off, telling it, hey, don't print colorful don't print colorful information. So you see, it's just black and white. There is no color because I passed this boolean flag to my native image compiler, and then it turned this flag off. So if a boolean flag for the compilation or the build starts with -h colon, and then plus means enable this boolean flag, minus means disable this boolean flag, right? So the output is not colorful at all. Now, obviously, as I mentioned, you can redirect the output to a text file. So let me just delete this. And that has nothing to do with the native image tool. It's just the property of the bash terminal. So instead of printing to the console, I want to say that, hey, run this build, create my app, but then also redirect, save the output that the native image generates to, let's call it build underscore output.txt, right? So it's not going to print anything to the terminal. It's going to create this text file right in the same directory here. And you will see that this text file gets updated. So if I continue refreshing, or maybe close it and open it again, this will get updated over and over again, because the terminal, you see now it gets updated, because as the build progresses, the output stream of this application from native image is redirected from the terminal to this output text file. So we are seeing the output instead of terminal, we are seeing it kind of live in this text file, right? And this is good if you want to script it and kind of do the compilation automatic, or you are running this kind of compilation and builds on a server, and you don't want the terminal to be busy with your compilation. You just want to redirect and then save the output. So if something goes wrong in one of the builds, you can also look at the outputs, right? So we saw that it redirects the output to a text file, and then our build is successful. We can actually run my app, my underscore app. Obviously it works fine. But then the other thing that we notice is that when you redirect the application like this, the terminal is still busy. So so let me just delete this build again. If I look at the terminal, when I ran this previously, the terminal was busy, right? So it doesn't release the shell. It redirects the output to the text file, but the process still keeps the shell busy. So basically, if we pass a ampersand, you see now it immediately releases the terminal, so I can go ahead and do other commands. It's fine, but that process is still running. You see this build output is still running, and we are building, but the terminal is not busy. And this is good if you're trying to run multiple builds simultaneously in the terminal. Obviously you should have enough processing power to handle that, but then the terminal is free. You can go ahead and do other stuff. And then your process is running in background. So basically this ampersand, whenever you tell, now it's also in fish is informing that there was one job running in the background. This has ended and everything is done, right? So if you want to run a command in terminal and you know that it's going to take a long time, and you don't want the terminal to be busy, you want to also run other commands, you can run the commands in background. So in order to run a terminal command in background, you end it with ampersand. Ampersand means, hey, run this command, but run it in background and release the terminal. Don't make the terminal busy. I want to enter other commands, right? And that also includes, for example, this my app. I can run it and the terminal has to wait for the app, right? But then I can tell it run my app, but release the terminal. So run this in the background. As you can see, it immediately returns, but then it still prints the output to the console, because my application, although it releases the terminal, but it still generates some output to the terminal. So the terminal has to go back and print it, right? And then the fish is intelligent in the sense that it tells me, hey, there was one job running in the background and it was this command, and now it's ended, it's finished, right? So again, I recommend that on macOS or Linux, you run fish on top of your current terminal because it adds more features, right? So the build output, again, we redirected the native image output to a text file. And then we can also use the ampersand command so that we run the build in the background. Usually when you have a build server, a server that you use, let's say a server has 64 CPU cores, so you can run multiple builds simultaneously because your server has enough compute power or CPU power to handle. And then basically you can when you run one build in the terminal, you want to run it with the ampersand so that the build is run in the background. And then you also want to redirect the output of the native image to a text file so that if something goes wrong, you go back and look at what went wrong, right? If native image encountered an error, the output is still going to be in the text file, right? So that's the thing. Later I will show you that in macOS and Linux, we can write shell commands that automates this kind of build processes. And then in the shell command, obviously, we redirect the output to a text file so that we log the build process. So that's one of the things, right? But the point here was to show you that there are two types of flag for the native image. One of them is -h colon, the other one is -r colon, right? So there are two types of commands. And most of these are booleans, so you can enable them with plus sign, disable them with minus sign. So -h colon, plus or minus, build output breakdowns, build output colorful, build output GC warnings, build output links, show links in build output. Again, default, all of these build output options, the default is plus, except for this one, build output prefix build output with PID. PID is the process ID. And then the image name, the default is negative. So if you again run multiple builds simultaneously on a computer, each build is a separate process, right? And then you can, if you want to distinguish which builds have finished, you can also pass the PID. And then if you enable this, the native image is going to add the process ID that was used to launch the native image. So we can go ahead and actually test this again. So let's delete this and let's go back to our terminal. All right, so I'm not going to redirect to output. Let's just keep to the terminal, but let's keep the build colorful. So with plus, and again, you can always add multiple flags, -h, plus, and what flag do we want? We want to build output prefix with a plus sign so that we enable it. All right, and then -class path here and this. So let's run this. So now it's obviously it's a colorful, and now it's actually giving the process information. And the reason is that sometimes something goes wrong in the process, CPU or operating system decides to terminate the process unexpectedly. But all operating systems keep a background log of all the processes that are running, how long it took, and other stuff, right? So, so if you know the process ID, you can later go back and check on the OS level, the logs that the operating system does of what was wrong in the process, or if something happens, right? Right now, everything worked fine. This process terminated, my application was generated, right? But then in the terminal, in the output of the native image, it also logs which application, which native executable was generated, and what was the process log for launching this native image application, right? So when you run a native image, you're running an application, which is native image. you feed it your class file and it generates something. So it's a process that is running. And again, right now it's running in the foreground of my terminal because I didn't use ampersand. Ampersand means run it in the background. Don't print anything to the console. Actually, it prints to the console as it is still allowed to print to the console, but it kind of relinquishes the control of the console, the shell, right? The shell is not busy. All right, and let's go back to our PowerPoint and finish up on this. So build output progress, report progress in build output, enable plus by default, and then build output, use new style, use new build output style, default is plus, right? So again, if I think that there was some old style of the output that the native image prints to the console, and now they switch to the new style, and it's basically by default enabled. We can actually go back and test this. So let's copy this build output new style and then go back to our terminal, to the next one here, and then we are going to run our application. Let's remove the previous two flags that we passed to the native image, and then we're going to say -h minus build output new style. Again, a build flag starts with -h colon, and then minus means this is a boolean flag. We're going to turn it off or set it to false, so which means don't use new style output. And then we run it. Oh, actually, we made a mistake, so I'm going to terminate this process. So let's delete this output again, and then go back to our terminal. So yeah, so -h colon -build output new style, and now here. So warning, option build output new style is deprecated and might be removed from future versions. So this is the old style. It shows the logs the name of the app, the process ID, class list, cap, setup. So for example, in the native GraalVM version JDK 11, this was the style that it used to print to the console, right? And now in the 17, they switched to the new style, which is colorful, nice. It gives you more information. It walks you through all the steps. It also tells you that, okay, I also print build artifact to here. So it just tells you that I created an executable file called my app. All right, so this is the concept of build flags. In the future lectures, if there are some important flags, I will definitely walk you through them. Most of these, again, are Boolean flags. You turn them on and off with plus minus. And there are two categories of the flags, either -h or -r. I hope you enjoyed this one. Please stay tuned, and I'll see you in the next one.